Most men chase a crown that was never theirs. They fight for thrones built of other people's eyes, applause, approval, a name spoken in rooms they will never enter. And when they finally sit on it, they find it hollow, because the crown that matters was never meant to be seen. It is forged in silence, worn in private, and it fits only the man who has learned to rule the one kingdom no one can take from him, himself. This is how to think like a king. Rome, 2nd century, a war tent on the frozen edge of the empire. Outside, the most powerful army in the world waits for orders. Inside, one man sits by a single oil lamp, writing, not to his generals, not to the Senate, but to himself. His name is Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, and the words he writes will outlive the empire he rules. He is not writing about conquest, he is writing about control. Marcus understood a secret most men die without learning, that the throne in the palace is a decoration. The real throne sits behind your eyes. And if you cannot rule there, if your thoughts riot, if your fears command you, if your appetites make decisions for you, then you are not a king. You are a peasant wearing borrowed jewelry. Most men spend their whole lives trying to conquer the world. A king begins by conquering the only square foot of ground that actually belongs to him, the one inside his own skull. What follows are the 8 laws of that conquest. The laws of a man who carries himself like a king, even when no one is watching. Especially when no one is watching. Law 1. Rule your mind. Epictetus, born a slave, died a philosopher, said there is only one real question a man must answer. What is in my control and what is not? The weather is not. Other people's opinions are not. Whether you are loved, praised, remembered, none of it. But your thoughts, your judgments, the meaning you assign to what happens to you, those are yours, and they are the only throne you will ever actually sit on. Marcus Aurelius buried 8 of his 13 children, 8. And in the private pages he never meant anyone to read, he did not curse the gods. He did not beg. He wrote one line to himself, again and again. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That is not cold. That is not detachment. That is a man refusing to let grief become a tyrant inside his own head. Most men live as tenants in their own minds. Every thought that walks in gets to sit on the throne. Anger knocks. They obey it. Fear whispers. They flinch. Envy slips through the door. They spend a week in its grip. A king does not evict these visitors. He simply does not kneel to them. The practice is ancient. The Stoics called it the morning premeditation. Before your feet touch the floor, you name what the day may bring. Insult, delay, betrayal, loss. You rehearse them in the quiet so that when they arrive at noon, they find you already seated on the throne, unsurprised. A mind that can be surprised can be ruled. A mind that has already seen the worst rules itself. Law 2. Command your moves. Seneca called anger a brief madness, and every man, at least once in his life, has let that brief madness cost him something that took years to build. A relationship, a reputation, a fortune, a future. The king is not the man who feels nothing. The king is the man who feels everything and acts on almost none of it. Picture Cato the Younger, walking through the streets of Rome in the pouring rain, barefoot, while men shouted insults at him. He did not argue. He did not defend himself. He did not even walk faster. When a friend asked why he endured it, Cato said, "Because if I ran from rain, I would run from worse." That is command. The peasant reacts. The king responds. And between those two words lives an entire life. There is a practice older than Rome itself. The Stoics did not call it this, but you can. The pause. Between the thing that happens and the thing you do about it, there is a space. For most men, that space is the width of a knife's edge. Insult in, rage out, temptation in, surrender out, no gap, no rule, no king. Your work is to widen that space. 10 seconds at first. 10 seconds before you reply to the message. 10 seconds before you speak the word you cannot take back. 10 seconds before you reach for the thing you swore you were done with. In those 10 seconds, a peasant becomes a king. Not because he has conquered anything outside of him, but because, for 10 whole seconds, he did not let the world press a button and make him dance. Widen the space, and your moves become yours again. Law 3. Master your money. Here is something the hustle crowd will never tell you. Seneca, the Stoic who wrote more about detachment than almost any man in history, was one of the richest men in Rome. Vineyards, estates, gold, influence, and his critics loved to throw it in his face. They said, "How can a man preach contentment from inside a palace?" Seneca's answer was sharper than any of them expected. He said, "I am not a wise man, but I have wealth the way a traveler holds a lamp, useful, replaceable, and if the wind takes it tonight, I walk on in the dark." That is the whole lesson. The peasant serves his money, the king uses it, and you can tell the difference in a single question. If it all vanished tomorrow, every coin, every account, every possession, would you still know who you are? If the answer is no, the money is not yours. You are its. There is a story about Diogenes, the old philosopher, sitting in the dust outside Athens, eating a crust of bread. Alexander the Great, the most powerful man alive, came to see him and said, "Ask me for anything, and it is yours." Diogenes looked up at the conqueror of the world and said, "Step aside, you are blocking my sun." Alexander walked away in silence. And later he said, "If I were not Alexander, I would want to be Diogenes." That is what it looks like when a man owns nothing and yet cannot be bought. The Stoic practice is older than money itself. Seneca called it the poverty week. Every month, for a few days, you live below your means on purpose. Plain food, no luxuries. The cheap bed, not to punish yourself, to prove to yourself that if the worst happened, you would still be standing, still be yourself. A man who has rehearsed losing everything cannot be controlled by anyone who threatens to take it. Law 4. Guard your silence. Zeno of Citium, the man who founded Stoicism, used to say we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Listen twice, speak once, and if you can, speak not at all. A king does not explain himself, not because he is arrogant, but because he understands something most men spend a lifetime learning. Every word you speak is a window into the room where you keep your mind, and most rooms were never meant to be toured. Zeno came to philosophy because of a shipwreck. He lost everything, washed up in Athens with nothing but his life, and instead of complaining, he walked into a bookshop, read about Socrates, and decided to begin again, quietly. Years later, when he was asked what he had gained from philosophy, he said, "The ability to converse with myself." Most men cannot go 5 minutes without broadcasting every thought they have, their feelings, their grievances, their plans, their pain, and they wonder why their lives feel thin. It is because every cup that is poured out cannot also be full. The king learns a harder skill. He keeps his counsel. He lets his work speak first. He understands that the unspoken win is sharper than the announced one, because it cannot be stolen, diluted, or argued with. The practice is simple, brutal, but simple. For 1 week, 1 single week, do not announce your plans. Not the workout, not the project, not the goal, not the comeback. Do them in silence. Let the only proof be the result. Watch what happens. You will feel the itch, the urge to tell someone, to get credit before the credit is earned. That itch is the peasant inside you, begging for the crown of attention. Starve him, and in the silence you will hear something most men never do, the sound of your own kingdom being built. Law 5. Choose your court. Every king has a court, and every court shapes the king. Marcus Aurelius, in the first pages of his Meditations, does something strange. He lists the people who made him: his grandfather for teaching him good manners, his mother for teaching him piety, his tutor for teaching him to endure hardship without complaint, his brother for showing him what a good character looked like. The most powerful man in the world, at the height of his power, begins his private journal by naming the people who carved him into the man he became. Because he knew what you must know. You do not rise alone, and you do not fall alone either. Epictetus said, "If you consort with a man covered in dirt, you cannot help but get some of the dirt on you." He was not talking about literal dirt. He was talking about the slow, quiet, almost invisible way the people around you reshape what you think is normal. Sit with complainers, and your problems grow teeth. Sit with the bitter, and the world turns gray. Sit with the small, and your ambitions shrink to fit the room. But sit with men who have ruled themselves, even just one, and something in you begins to stand up straighter. A king cannot afford a careless court. The practice is called the associations audit. Take a piece of paper. Write down the 5 people you spend the most time with. Next to each name, write one word, the word that describes what they pull out of you: courage or fear, discipline or drift, clarity or confusion. Do not lie on this paper, No one is reading it but you. Then ask the only question that matters. Is this the court of a king? Or is this the court of a man who has given up the throne without noticing? You do not have to cut anyone out in a single day, but you must stop pretending that the air you breathe does not shape the lungs that breathe it. Choose your court, or your court will choose you. Law 6. Own your mornings. Book 5 of the Meditations opens with a line so honest it could have been written this morning. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. What do I have to complain of if I am going to do what I was born for? The Emperor of Rome, the most powerful man alive, giving himself a pep talk at sunrise because even he did not want to get up. Let that land for a second. If Marcus Aurelius had to talk himself out of bed, you are not weak for struggling. You are human. The only difference is what you do next. The peasant loses the first hour of the day to the phone, to the scroll, to 1,000 strangers' opinions before a single one of his own has been formed. By the time his feet hit the floor, his mind is already a battlefield owned by other men. The king takes the first hour back, not because the first hour is magic, but because the first hour is the only hour of the day no one else has a claim on, and the man who surrenders it surrenders the whole day, every day, until the whole life is surrendered. This is the 5 a.m. covenant, not a hack, not a routine, a covenant, a promise from you to you that the first hour of the day belongs to the man you are trying to become, not the man everyone else is trying to make you. What you do in it matters less than the fact that you take it. Walk, read, sit in silence, write one page, train the body, pray if you pray. Think a single thought all the way through. Just do it before the world gets its hands on you. The first hour is the foundation stone. Lay it right, and the rest of the day stands on something. Lay it wrong, and you will spend the next 16 hours wondering why everything feels like sand. A kingdom is just a sequence of mornings. Own yours. Law 7. Endure in silence. Epictetus was born a slave. His master was cruel. There is a story, and no one knows if it is true, but the Stoics told it for centuries, that once, when his master was twisting his leg in a rage, Epictetus said calmly, "If you keep doing that, it will break." And when it broke, he said, "I told you it would." No scream, no curse, no plea. The Stoics did not love pain. Let me be clear about that. They were not masochists. They were not cold. They felt every blow the world landed on them, the same as you and I. But they knew a secret. That suffering, performed, doubles, and suffering endured in silence begins to shrink. Most men, the moment they are hurt, become broadcasters. Every pain becomes a post, every wound becomes a story, every setback becomes a speech. And the strange thing is, the more you tell the story, the bigger the wound grows, because now you have to keep feeding it. The king does not perform his suffering, not because he is pretending, but because he refuses to let his pain become his identity. Because he knows that the moment you build your throne on your wounds, you can never afford to heal. There is a practice the Stoics called voluntary discomfort, a cold shower, a skipped meal, a long walk in weather you would rather avoid. Not because the cold is noble, not because the hunger is holy, but because every time you choose a small hardship and endure it without complaint, you are training the muscle you will need when a real hardship comes. And real hardships come for everyone, the ones you did not choose, the ones that choose you. When that day arrives, the man who has rehearsed endurance in silence will find, to his surprise, that he already knows how to stand. The peasant asks, "Why me?" The king asks, "What now?" Same pain, different throne. Law 8. Remember death. In ancient Rome, when a victorious general rode through the streets in his triumph, gold armor, cheering crowds, the entire city at his feet, there was a tradition so strange it almost sounds like a myth. Behind him, in the same chariot, stood a slave, quiet, unimpressive. And the slave's only job, as the whole city screamed the general's name, was to lean forward and whisper 3 words into his ear, over and over. Remember you are mortal. Remember you are mortal. Remember you are mortal. At the highest moment of his life, with everything going his way, the general was reminded that he was made of the same dust as the men cheering him, and that this day would end, and that the city that loved him today would forget him tomorrow. That is memento mori. And it is not morbid. It is the sharpest blade a king carries. Because the man who has not accepted his own death is ruled by 1,000 small fears pretending to be urgent. He cannot take the risk. He cannot say the true word. He cannot love openly. He cannot start the thing. He cannot end the thing. He cannot sit in silence, because silence reminds him of something he is running from. But the man who has sat with his own mortality, really sat with it, becomes impossible to rattle. He knows the appointment is coming. He just does not know the hour, and so he stops wasting his hours. The Stoic practice is the nightly examine. Before sleep, you look back at the day and you ask, if this had been my last day, would I have been proud of how I spent it? Not perfect, proud. Not every day will pass that test. That is the point. The test is not to win every night. The test is to be a man who still dares to ask the question. Death is not the enemy of a king. Death is the thing that makes the crown mean anything at all. So here is the crown. 8 laws, 8 disciplines, 8 quiet wars you fight inside yourself every day for the rest of your life. Rule your mind, command your moves, master your money, guard your silence, choose your court, own your mornings, endure in silence, remember death. Read them again, slowly. Notice what is not on the list. There is no law about dominating other men, no law about building an empire, no law about being feared or followed or famous, no law about the crown the world puts on your head, because that crown is decoration. The crown these laws give you is made of something older, heavier, almost invisible. It is made of the slow accumulation of days in which you did the thing you said you would do, in which you felt the impulse and did not obey it, in which you were insulted and did not answer, in which you were tempted and walked on, in which you were afraid and moved anyway. That crown is not awarded, it is forged, one ordinary Tuesday at a time. In rooms no one is watching, in moments no one will ever thank you for. Under lamplight, by yourself, deciding, quietly, stubbornly, without a witness, that you will not be the peasant in your own life. Marcus wrote his meditations for no audience. He never intended them to be published. He was not trying to teach anyone. He was just reminding himself, night after night, that the work of being a king was never finished. And when you finally understand that the crown is a daily act, not a one-time event, something strange happens. You stop chasing thrones, because you are already sitting on one. One last thing. The hardest part of all of this is that no one will ever see it. No one will clap when you hold your tongue. No one will post about the morning you got up without checking your phone. No one will notice the insult you let pass, the friend you quietly stopped seeing, the money you refused to be owned by, the pain you carried without narration. The coronation is private, and that is the point, because a man who needs to be seen to be a king was never one. A man who can do the work in the dark, who can sit with himself in the lamplight, like Marcus in his tent, and ask the old honest questions. That man is sovereign the moment he decides to be. You do not need permission. You do not need a better year. You do not need to finish healing first. You do not need anyone else to agree. You need one quiet decision, made now, made alone. That from this moment forward, the kingdom inside your skull has a king again, and you are him. If this spoke to you, if something in these laws felt like it was written for the version of you no one else sees, then stay a while. Subscribe. There is more of this waiting, and the next time you catch your own reflection, in a window, in a screen, in the dark, do not look away. Look at him like you are looking at a king, and start carrying yourself like one.